Hello, everyone, and welcome into the offseason. I'm Cassie Carlson coming to you this week from Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. We have been here all week covering the Chicago Bears. There has been plenty of trade talks with the Bears in mind. The Bears are dealing with cap constraints that is making their offseason a lot different for Ryan Poles, and we are bringing you all the latest. I go one-on-one with Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles. We talk to national insiders to get their perspective on the Bears coming off their run in the playoffs. But first, we're going to start with our conversation with Dan Wiederer of The Athletic about everything we've learned this week. Heard from Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles multiple times on Tuesday. Let's start there. What were your main takeaways from those conversations?
I think they're very aware of the activity that's required of them here in the near future of trying to set themselves up for free agency by taking care of all the in-house business that they have to get done with players that either they need to restructure contracts, potentially listen to trade talks on. You know, there's a lot of work here that needs to be done. We know where they are strapped up against the salary cap right now. And so they've got to move some things around to pursue this next roster building cycle. It's going to be different than it was in 2025, in my opinion. I think you've heard that from Ryan, that they have constraints, that they're going to be in a little different space of free agency. But until they see some of these moving parts move, we don't know what's next.
Yeah, so the first one was Tremaine Edmonds, who they gave permission to seek a trade, which is essentially saying, hey, is there any value we can get back for him? But I don't know if a team is going to trade something knowing that he's going to get cut in 2 weeks anyway. That one didn't come as a surprise. They need to free up $15 million in cap space.
Well, look, and that's the most obvious move on the roster right now to get them the cap space and the clarity that they need for this next phase. You're right. I think it's going to be very difficult to find a suitor that's willing to give up draft capital. The reason you would is if Tremaine is an absolute must-have player for your program. At that rate, I'm not sure that there's going to be a lot of teams that look at him that way, but it certainly doesn't hurt to listen and try to put that hook in the water and see if somebody bites. If not, I think he's going to be the guy that's naturally cut, and then the Bears have that room to play with at that point.
And then Poles was asked about Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift, two other players who have been talked about as cap casualty possibilities. He seemed to be like, no, we hope that they're on our roster next year. That was my takeaway.
Mine as well, and I think that they understand that every one of these moves is linked with the others, right? And so if they are able to free up cap space by releasing Edmonds, if they do find some takers for some other trade prospects, well, now they don't have to make the really difficult decisions that might come with players like Cole and DeAndre, who both were very valuable in that offense. And the more continuity that you can retain going into 2026, the better it is for Caleb, the better it is for Ben, and all of a sudden you can start to dream those dreams, which they're vocalizing. We talked last week about the Max Crosby, Caleb Williams, the vision of Caleb saying we want to not only be the highest scoring offense in the league, but we want to go set records. And so to do that, I think the continuity will be key.
All right, so the Combine, there's obviously a lot of talks about, are these trades going to happen, reports about this player being available, and we wake up today, Thursday it is, and apparently Gervon Dexter is a potential trade option for the Bears, but I'm not sure how much you would get back for him. What is he, a 5th, 6th round pick? He hasn't been consistent.
Right, and then that's where you would need another team to be willing to roll the dice. And I like Gervon Dexter was a day 2 pick that just never became the player that the Bears thought he could be when they drafted him. Obviously, a new regime came in, and he was productive in spurts last year, but it just wasn't that every week impact that you want. And I think you've really read between the lines here over the last couple months that the Bears want to prioritize their defensive front and the interior specifically to become more disruptive up there. Gervon Dexter could be a part of that. He could be headed elsewhere. And so it's just a matter of where these things go. You talk about all these names that have been sort of floating around now as trade possibilities for the Bears. Ryan said it earlier in the week. It's been a while since teams have been calling us on players that they felt like they wanted to have from our program. That's a good problem to have, but it is still something you've got to sort through.
Yeah, so it's always the question, because we talked last week about priorities, and it was the entire defensive line. And Ben Johnson said he doesn't really care if the pressure comes from the interior or the edge. But it's a deep edge class.
Yes, it is.
It's still so hard to predict, though, who is going to be available. That's what I laughed about the different combine experience this year, because when the defensive linemen were speaking on Wednesday, I'm like, how do you even know who to go listen to? Because they could be there, they could be gone.
Yeah.
The Bears draft board could lay a totally different way, and they go, I don't know, another tight end.
Right, yeah, no, and one of the things that you try to do as a front office in March is set yourself up for the draft so that you can be nimble and flexible. Like the way it was put to me years ago was you want to treat free agency in a way where if they just canceled the draft, you wouldn't go into the season feeling panicked, right? Like that you have enough functional starters in holes where now you can adapt to when the draft board does get fluid in the way you talk about it. You know, I think you and I have both been kind of lukewarm from the start on the idea of Max Crosby being a realistic option to add to the Bears. Part of that is the supply and demand here, where you have not only a free agency class that's deep at edge rusher, but a draft class, as you mentioned, that people feel very strongly about, that you can find impact players really into the early parts of day 3. And so with that in mind, you just got to be calculated about what you think you can get where and set up plan A, plan B, plan C, and figure out where it all goes.
Yeah, so Max Crosby, if you listen to the Raiders front office, their GM, John Spytek, if you look at head coach Clint Kubiak, they both say that they want Max Crosby to be a Raider next year.
Yeah.
Do you get the sense? I mean, it's so hard to glean. Everyone's trying to create a market for their
That's
player
right.
as well. So it's like, he's the best, we want to keep him, so you better bring your best offer. And the asking price is obviously going to go up. We were just talking to Mike Florio, who's like, it's definitely 2 first-round picks.
It's what I've heard from the beginning. It's what you look. The Cowboys put a framework out there last year, getting not only 2 first-round picks, but then a Pro Bowl defensive starter in Kenny Clark to come as part of that package. And so if you're the Raiders, why would you ask for anything lower than that when you've got a premier player at a premier position? And so, look, he's under contract in Las Vegas through 2029. There's an easy out after next season, but they are under no obligation to trade Max Crosby. Yeah. And so at this point, they control the game, right? And they control the asking price. They control all of it. And so if a team's not willing to go there, they say, okay, well, then we'll figure it out here and keep a very good player as part of our program going forward. So that one's going to be interesting. Obviously, I don't think the Bears are in play because you don't, one, want to give up the draft capital, and 2, you just don't have a ton of cap space to play with unless you were to offload a high-priced player on your own roster.
Which would be?
Obviously, DJ Moore's the one that's come up the most. And obviously, the things we heard from the Bears this week, they were full of praise for who DJ is as a player, who he is as a teammate. But
creating
they also,
the market.
But they also were not, detached from reality and the idea that 100% he's going to be a Bear in 2026. It's definitely open for possibility that they can take some calls that will turn their heads and DJ goes elsewhere.
I found it interesting on Tuesday because Ryan Poles was put through the media car wash for essentially like 2.5 hours. So he talks at the podium to all the national media where he talks about how much he loves DJ Moore and that they don't know where he stands right now, if he's going to be on the roster. And then he goes to ESPN 1000. He's like, we're going to listen to calls.
Yeah.
And so it's like, when someone talks so much and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, they're not saying all the same things. I felt like that was kind of the case.
Well, you bring up a very interesting dynamic of this week here at the Combine. Part of my Wednesday was devoted to catching up on all the interviews that Ben and Ryan did elsewhere, including here on Fox. And you had to listen to every word that both guys said to kind of get the full picture of how they feel about a number of different situations. And so that one's really interesting because when the Bears paid DJ, I guess it was the summer of 2024, it was with the undisputed notion that he was clearly their number one guy in their offense. And now you've got Colston Loveland, and now you've got Rome Odunze, and now you've got Luther Burden, and you've got some backs. And so he doesn't have to be the focal point of your offense, which does, by extension, kind of make him expendable if an offer is good enough.
He's going to be their highest paid player next year, $28.5 million. How does that make you feel knowing that he would be the highest paid Bear?
Right. There's an expectation, when you compensate a guy that way of what they produce. What's been in conversations I've had with people around the league, the biggest mystery is how a guy who has been so incredibly consistently productive throughout his career with bad quarterbacks finally got the most talented quarterback of his career to work with and had the lowest production of his career. It's a mystery.
In a busy room.
No question. It's a busy room. It's a new offense that, he had to learn his place in it. They obviously value his versatility. One of the things that is clearly underappreciated in the fan base in Chicago that people in the league love is DJ plays every week. He's one of those guys that you don't have to worry about him missing time no matter how banged up he is. He's there for you when the game starts. And so that's a quality that even the Bears, laud and think is a very valuable thing. And so that could be intriguing to another team. There's some good teams out there that need receivers and have some cap room. The New England Patriots came up in a couple different conversations I had. We'll see where all that heads.
It's also a deep draft class if you do need a receiver. That's the other thing that other teams are going to be considering. We talked to Rich Eisen, and I said, what's the national narrative around someone like DJ Moore? And he said, I don't know that there really is one, which tells me that he's not viewed as a number one receiver by a lot of people.
Well, I think there's number one receivers and then there's top tier receivers.
Yeah, that's
right?
fair. He's not Jamar Chase.
Right. He's not in that upper tier for sure. But I look, like even back to last year, if you just took DJ's highs, you see these big-time contributions and big-time moments, and that turns the heads of people in the league that say, okay, like he's capable of this, right? Like now can we get it out of him consistently? Does he fit with our program? All those things. I think, our experience with DJ over the last few years is he does seem to be a low maintenance guy inside the locker room. Rare at that position to be productive and also low maintenance. So there's a lot of intrigue with DJ. I'm fascinated to see, one, where he winds up in 2026, Chicago or elsewhere, and then what he does with this next phase of his career.
The other thing I keep going back to is just the fact that Ben Johnson drafted Luther Burden, or he was the coach that was part of the draft of Luther Burden, and that they want to see Luther take that next step, and they have similar play styles, and so they feel like Luther can compensate the production that DJ Moore had. That would be another reason to offload that big contract. You think it's going to be a busy 2 weeks?
Yeah, I do, and I think like in this next phase, which is very weird for us in Chicago after these last several off seasons that have been such big splash headline grabbing springs, like you're at a state where I think the next big moves for the Bears are going to be subtractions, some of the ones that we've talked about here, and so then it's like the ripple effect of that is going to be really interesting to see how they do that. We haven't talked about Kevin Byard yet, who I think is such a key piece in this defense. Can they meet the asking price, or does Kevin get a market that prices the Bears out of it as they try to rebuild the defense with obviously holes on the back end of the secondary, holes at linebacker if Trey Edmonds leaves, needs up front. So like that defensive replenishing is going to be very interesting to see how they handle it. And I've heard everything since the end of the season that Kevin's a priority, and yet a couple things I've heard here this week is that I wouldn't be surprised if he goes elsewhere, which is like it almost blows my mind to some extent.
He kind of alluded to that at locker cleanout because he said he has to do what's best for his family, and he knows that he was one of the best, and he was the best in interceptions, and he is on the other side of 30, the other side of his career, but still playing at a high level. And he's like, I still got to see what market's out there for me, even though he would want to be back.
What I think is interesting about Kevin is at this stage of his career, he's very thoughtful with these decisions. And so it's not just going to be, I'm going to go grab the biggest bag of money I can find. He said he's very into legacy. He wants to go play somewhere where he can contend. And then he's been very, very forthright in talking about how much he enjoyed last season with the Bears. He played inside a defense under Dennis Allen that accentuated his gifts. He had an all-pro season. He took the ball away the way he's capable of. He was really a leader inside a locker room that listened to him and responded to him. And so there was an adrenaline rush for Kevin in being part of that 11 wins, a playoff victory, seeing Chicago come from the ashes and build itself into a contender again. So, like, he will make this decision with some deep thought. It's just going to be interesting to see what options are there for him.
So if he does have options and he does choose to go elsewhere, I thought Ryan Poles was talking like Jaquan Brisker wasn't going to come back because he knows that he's going to have to pay Kevin Byard, and they can't pay both, and they actually have no safeties on the roster right now. And so does Brisker then come back into play of returning?
I mean, certainly that's why this is all fluid. But you do mention you could feel in the sentiments that Ryan Poles expressed the other day that there's a lot of players, Jaquan Brisker being on that list, that he feels strongly about as guys who gave the organization their all and were part of something of bringing this up, but that you have to say goodbye to it. It's he said, it's the beauty of this league. We're constantly having to put these rosters back together every single year. It's a new team every year, and sometimes as hard as it hurts as a human being to let some people go, it's just the nature of the business. Yeah,
and Ryan Poles is trying to be flexible, sustainable with the success that they've had this year for years to come, preparing to hopefully pay a quarterback. And it's like Caleb Williams is suddenly going to take the next step, and we were just talking to Mike Florio, who said the window is unlimited when you have Caleb Williams as your quarterback. So does that relieve some of the pressure on him to make all the moves right now? Like, they don't need to go all in this year.
Correct. And like that is the hardest thing to convince an eager fan base of. Right? Like, everybody's in this win now mode. And the Bears are in win now mode without question. But
they were last year.
But it's not now or never mode, right? And so what you're trying to do is give yourself as many opportunities to be competitive and contending in January for the next decade. And when you believe in your head coach and you believe in your quarterback, you believe that window's open for you, and so you don't have to go chase a one-year run. And I think that Ryan Pace took a little bit of a stray from Ryan Poles, who said, we've gone out, this organization has in the past, and made some big splash signings, and then ultimately when they don't produce the end results that you hope for, all of a sudden it comes crashing down on you quickly. That's an allusion to the Khalil Mack trade of 2018 that produced one tremendous season, and then everything fell off, and then they had to rebuild from the start again.
I keep saying that I'm not very good with like the whole cap thing. So from your understanding, when you restructure a contract, Ryan Poles said, yes, it's an option, but he didn't seem like he was so much of a fan of it.
Well, because most of the time you have to kick cap money into future years, right? And so you can clear space. There's a lot of ways to get creative and manipulate things in the short term, but eventually that puts greater weight in future years. And so then you get into these situations. You see it all the time in the league where a team will be in cap hell, really, where they've done these things, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh man, now comes the bill, right? Like it's like credit card debt. Eventually you have to pay that. That's not just free for the rest of your life. And so there's some danger to it. So you just have to be calculated with it. I feel like this front office, honestly, has done a really good job over the last several years of keeping their cap health strong, where they're not in some of these situations that feel dire. The goal is to continue along that path, even as you try to build a team that can go win a Super Bowl.
All right, I have 2 quarterback questions. One, will Tyson Bagent be on the roster, or will he get traded?
That's a great question.
The fact that we're talking about Tyson before Caleb is crazy.
The head coach's admiration for Tyson is awesome. Like you could just feel it the other day at the podium from Ben, and we referred to it on the Take the North podcast as the football love affair. Like these two guys love being around each other, and I don't think either one of them wants to give that up. At the same time, when you have a QB1 like Caleb Williams, who's potentially going to be written in Sharpie for the next 7 years on your depth chart, right, who has never missed a game in his career, you've got to start thinking about what can we get back for these returns. And then you look at the Denver Broncos loss in the AFC Championship game, and you're like, man, their QB2 wasn't up to the moment when their QB1 wasn't available, and so then you have to think about that. And so I just feel like there's so many dynamics with Tyson that the Bears, I'm certain, will listen to offers. How high they go remains to be seen. And then what's fascinating this year, I think, is that the QB landscape, both draft and free agency, is as barren as I've ever seen it in the offseason. And so these teams with needs are going to start to get desperate. And you know what quarterback desperation means. Sometimes a team will go out and overpay. So if somebody comes to the phone lines at Hallis Hall and says, hey, we'll give you a 2 for Tyson Bagent, Ryan and Ben have to say, hey, let's talk for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I just find it crazy that he's like in the same conversation of like potentially becoming a starter like Malik Willis,
right, yeah,
who's way more proven in this
league. No question, and way more experienced, right? And what Tyson has is some really good preseason tape. He was decent as a rookie, relieving Justin Fields a few years ago. And then he's got the obvious, sincere, genuine endorsement from his head coach. And that didn't seem like posturing. Like it wasn't.
No,
this wasn't an advertisement, right? Like this goes back to the last summer where you could feel Ben's enjoyment of how Tyson invests in the process, and that matters. You also have a member of the Bears front office, and Ian Cunningham, who's no longer a member of the Bears front office, and he's in Atlanta with a team that's got quarterback needs. So word of mouth starts to filter around a little bit on players like that.
All right, you're working on a story about Caleb Williams on The Athletic. What's the focus?
Yeah, it's about how he's not going to play basketball anymore.
Oh, yeah.
I loved that. The 3-point shootout at All-Star Weekend in LA didn't go so well. So Chicago Bears fans can rest easy.
Maybe in the locker room they'll work on
right. Shot. Like it's low ceilings in that Bears locker room, so maybe that threw him off at All-Star Weekend. But with that box checked, with him not going to play basketball, we're trying to figure out what the Bears' priorities are for him. I think what we've heard is this heightened quest for efficiency from Ben Johnson. That goes back to this whole completion percentage number.
EPA, remember when we were talking about that?
We talked about EPA. Ben set the bar last summer at 70% completion. He actually kind of temporarily lowered it and said, we still want Caleb to get to 70, but next year a leap from 58 to 65 will be kind of our realistic goal. And so that's important as they try to lean into his familiarity in the system. That should help Caleb, increase his efficiency as an effectiveness. But then they've also got to get him better with footwork, at finding checkdowns, at understanding how to make some of the easy throws easy and not just relying on, obviously, the special gifts that we saw particularly down the stretch of last season that blow everyone's mind. And I'm sure you've had conversations here this week where people will ask you about 1, 2, 3, 4 different Caleb Williams throws with this admiration, like, man, that's a dude right there.
Yeah, they feel like he can win anything at that point.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to ask you, ending the Combine week.
Thank God.
All right, congratulations, you survived. Everyone needs a T-shirt. Any bold predictions that you have for the Bears offseason?
Man, that's a good one. I guess my boldest one will be that DJ gets traded sometime before April. That's my boldest prediction right now. We'll see what's there for the Bears, but that's where I'm going right now.
But you're not going as far as saying DJ Moore is part of a trade that includes Max Crosby. You
I
don't
am not
feel like
going
that's
far.
happening.
No, I don't think that's in play. I've been wrong before. I could be wrong again. I don't see that happening, but we'll see what shakes down on that front. And yeah, as far as surviving Combine week, I've run out of liquid IV at this point, Cassie. So it's time to go
all you
home.
need is salt. That's the thing. People think you need liquid IV. All you need is salt.
My cheat code down here is liquid IV. I've got a bunch of RX bars, and and then I bring a sandwich bag full of ginger to settle the stomach after some
wanna
long
ask
nights
any
and big
more.
dinners.
I don't want to ask any more questions. Dan Wiederer, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Cassie.
Coming up next on the offseason, I go one-on-one with Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles. What is their window to compete for a championship? And when we talk to Ben Johnson, we ask him his perspective as an offensive play caller. What kind of pass rusher is the most difficult to game plan against? That's coming your way next on the offseason. It's the first time since you've been GM of the Bears that you don't have a new coach or a top 10 pick. So how does that change the experience for you this week?
Yeah, the offseason is completely different. They're always a little stressful trying to put plans together, but not having to search and not having to worry about, a quarterback is a good deal. We've been able to focus on the rest of our team, and we're looking forward to making the right decisions and putting this team in a position to not only get back to where we were last year, but to clear that hurdle and get to the championship game.
Yeah, it's a different hurdle for you going into this offseason knowing the cap constraints that you haven't really had to deal with. There's restructuring, there's cap casualties that are going to have to be made. How do you prioritize what you want to do with this roster? Like, do you work from top down, or how does that work from your standpoint?
Yeah, I think the first thing is getting together with my staff, understanding what the landscape looks like. We kind of create this mesh board of what the draft and free agency looks like, as well as cap casualties that may not have happened yet. And then we put a plan together. Then the next thing is meeting with our coaches to make sure that we have alignment with what we need to have success and take our team to the next level. Once we have all of that, that's when I meet with the money man, Matt Feinstein, who really talks about our constraints and what we can and can't do. In terms of how that impacts us today and down the road. So we'll put up guardrails or prioritize different positions. It's tough also because you're also trying to stay open-minded with things that may pop up. If it's trades or something you didn't expect, you got to make those adjustments. So there's a lot of work that goes into it, but our goal is to make as much clarity as possible so when things happen, we can move fast.
You mentioned Jaquan Brisker, and you talked about, he was one of your first draft picks, and how the emotions come into play. Now 5 years into it, is that hard to separate at all when you get to these decisions that are going to have to be made?
It's really difficult. I talked about this earlier, but especially when you win games, you create this really deep relationships, and you see guys help you get to the next level. So when you have to pick and choose and really try to live in different spaces cap-wise, it can be really difficult, and it's hard to turn the emotional side off of it. But at the end of the day, we got to do what's best for our organization.
I remember last year you saying that the draft, free agency, all really aligned with your needs of how you wanted to improve this team. How do you feel like draft, free agency aligned with your needs this year? Yeah,
I think there's some good alignment. Where we operate in free agency based on how much money we have is kind of going to determine that. Draft-wise looks good. I think anytime your O-line and D-line have a lot of prospects that you like, especially at this phase, it's good for your football team. So we'll keep an eye on both sides and see if we can bring it all together like we did last year.
A lot of it last year was overhauling the offensive line, and the Joe Thuney trade really kicked that off. I think people are thinking this year, well, let's see how the defense gets addressed in a lot of things. I'm more so curious, how do you consume and watch the Super Bowl? Because everyone talks about it being a copycat league. Do you look at the Seahawks and do you look at the Patriots? Do you watch it from a GM lens, or how do you watch that and kind of incorporate that into what you think you might need to do?
Yeah, I think you have to look at it through a GM lens, and you want to know what works, what can help you win a championship. And I got a ton of respect for John Snyder, someone that I've always looked up to in terms of how he's built teams. Obviously, to get to the Super Bowl again for him is incredible. So we'll take some notes on how they put their team together, how they draft is really important, decisions that they made along the way. You always want to do a little research to make sure that you're doing things that are kind of the championship way. It's hard not to look at it through that lens.
We talked about the offensive line. Darnell Wright was a huge pice of that as well, knowing that he's up for an extension. Is that a priority for you this offseason? Yeah,
it's definitely a priority. There's a lot going on right now. We'll eventually start having those conversations. It's been cool because anytime you have a new coaching staff come in, you're hoping that they saw the same vision as you did. And in terms of Ben, Dan Rochard, Kyle Devan, they share that vision. not only, we're excited about where he's at, but we're really excited what Darnell can be.
Yeah.
If he continues to put in the work that he has been, we think he can be, a really talented tackle in this league and help us win championships.
Kind of comparing it to having the 25th overall pick, also comparing the fact that, like, everyone's like, you hit the head coach.
Yeah.
You got the quarterback, and
Yep.
as you mentioned before, you want to see him continue to take the next steps in year 3, year 4 in Ben Johnson's system.
Yep.
How does that change what you want to accomplish and what you want to do? Do you set a window for yourself? Because I think people keep talking about what's the window, and do you try to set that expectation, or do you leave it more wide open?
Yeah, I think there's 2 lenses to look through with that. Obviously, from cap constraints, when you have a quarterback that's on a rookie deal, you do want to accomplish some things in that window because it gets really difficult once you pay the quarterback. But with that said, in terms of putting pressure on ourselves, I think we want to just see progress the next year. Unfortunately, we can't bring the success we had last year to this. It'll be a different team, and we got to continue to work and improve and grow and develop. But with that said, you want to make sure that you put the best team that you can on the football field, and there's some opportunities now that those windows might close as you move further down the road with a bigger quarterback contract.
We have to talk about Ian Cunningham getting the GM job for the
Yeah.
Falcons.
Yeah.
He said he wanted everyone to give you crap about your tan because you got to enjoy vacation, and
This guy, yeah.
and he's busy getting things going in Atlanta. But the compensatory picks is obviously a topic of conversation.
Yeah.
You mentioned having conversations with the league. What kind of answers are you looking for from them?
Yeah, I just, they had a rule in place. Ian's the general manager. He's running the team, putting the roster together, drafting, free agency, everything the traditional GM does. The structure is just a little bit different. So we're looking forward just to getting a response on why the change in the rule for us. So we'll just work through that. We're going to communicate through the right channels. Not trying to make a lot of noise from it. I try to make it very clear. The energy and effort to help develop Ian is for his development, and really it was for us to be as successful as we could be as a football team and putting the roster together. Delegated a lot to him so that when he had the opportunity to get into the GM chair, he was further along than I was. So he had the least amount of blind spots as possible. And the conversation that I had with the Falcons was being very clear with that. Like, they're going to guy that I'd find it hard to believe there's many guys, first-time GMs, that were going to be as prepared as Ian. And they should find that out, and they should have some success too.
Jeff King being promoted, a great story, intern all the way to assistant GM, and I always say he's the guy that founded Tyson Bagent.
Yeah.
He's the one that scouted him. What is he going to add to that position?
Yeah, Jeff's got a really unique perspective on football. Being, for our staff, the guy that really played NFL football last, he understands the coaching dynamic. He understands scheme. He understands what other teams are doing strategy-wise, and is able to give us a lot of really good feedback in terms of things that we should do. I think the player perspective, the locker room perspective, is something I always want to be tapped into. I know that decisions impact the locker room, but I want to make sure that we keep enhancing our locker room and communicating to our locker room the proper way so that we can be a really good organization. So Jeff's a fantastic evaluator, sees the game the right way, and also is a great teammate to the rest of our staff.
Do you listen to podcasts that players go on in the off season, or do you stay away?
I stay away.
Okay.
Yeah, I try to have a clear mind on everything, but yeah.
Caleb was on, obviously, a podcast, and he said he wants to be the #1 offense in the league next year. Also talked about being a little bit of a maniac, and just in terms of how he wants to be the best on the field.
Yeah.
When you hear your quarterback continue to make that message public, I mean, what excites you about that?
I mean, his overall maturity from the day he got into the league to what it is today is really impressive. That growth is really impressive. I got to give Ben a lot of credit for that. They spent a lot of time together. He's starting to do the things, not just say, but do the things that professional quarterbacks do. And that gets me excited, because if his mentality is that, it'll start rubbing off on a lot of the other guys. And if we get the whole crew moving with that mentality of trying to be the absolute best in the league, one of one, we're going to be in a really good spot.
All right, Ryan Poles, I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I certainly am grateful. I know that, to to be around that group of guys. You don't know exactly what the locker room is going to be like when you come into a new situation like this, and now I've got a greater appreciation for everyone that Ryan really brought together with this team. It's a great group, you know, and I wish, I told him the last team meeting, I wish we could bring everybody back and just duplicate that same feeling that we had, and yet it just doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, we got to start all over again, build this 90-man roster back up and make it as competitive as we can possibly be so that we can take even another step going into next year. That's going to be the challenge. Yeah, I did have some time. I was able to get away and hit that reset button, but you get the itch pretty quick to get back to work.
Your quarterback said he was wanting to get back into the facility already, and you told him, like, please go get away, and then he's already thinking about wanting to be the #1 offense next year, just trying to, like, regroup these guys and get back in the building, meet with you again. When you reflect on that relationship with Caleb, how exciting is it? Because last year we had a conversation about you were meeting with him for the first time. You were going to show him tape from his previous year. How exciting is it for you to know that he's going to be in your offense year 2, and it's not learning this new language, it's now taking the next step in what you want to build?
Yeah, no, I think we're both really excited about it. We're going to be so much further ahead from our communication standpoint than what we were a year ago. Having gone through it, there is no learning quite like doing it. I can show him as much tape as I possibly can, and yet he's got to go through it and make some mistakes to truly learn from it. And so I think we're going to be so much further ahead just from a passing game standpoint. I'm really encouraged by it. I was really impressed by how much better he got over the course of the season. I look forward to being able to capitalize on that coming back and continue to forge ahead.
You said one of the benefits of being here for a year is you know the guys in the locker room, the personalities. When you go through now a draft process, what is the personality of a guy that you want to bring into the Bears?
Well, yeah, I think we're going to put a premium on really good football players. You can take some of these measurables and, I'm not saying completely negate them, but at the same time take them with a grain of salt, if you will. We just want really good football players, guys that love football, are passionate about football, that really they don't know what they're going to do with themselves if they don't have football. I think that's when you get the best version of these guys, and it helps your team, and everyone gets better from that. And so that's what we're here to find out. We get a good chance here in these formal interviews to get to know these players for the first time. Our scouts have done a phenomenal job. I was able to sit in on some of those meetings over the previous few weeks, just listening to them and the homework that they've done over the course of the season on these guys. And I think we're going to find a number of players that really fit our mold.
When you talk about bringing players in, your perspective from being the offensive coordinator formerly to now head coach, what makes a good defensive lineman that's so tough to game plan against?
Yeah, I think a relentless nature. I think that's something that always comes to mind. Not always the most talented, but a guy that you have no breather plays against. Something that I look back at some of the former offensive linemen that are now coaches having those conversations with, hey, who gave you the most problem? It wasn't necessarily the biggest names. It was sometimes the guys that just went for longer and for harder than their opponent. And I think there's something to be said for that. Guys that you're going to get 100% from them every single snap.
I was asking Ryan how he consumes watching a Super Bowl. How do you watch a Super Bowl? Is it with the head coach lens, how the roster is constructed? Is it the quarterback? How do you consume that?
No, I just watch the Super Bowl for the commercials more so than
And your favorite is?
Yeah, no, I can't. It's hard to watch those. Always. We have them on, and we try to enjoy it as a family as much as we can. But it's bittersweet when that goes on. It kind of gets your competitive juices flowing a little bit as you're looking at it, particularly when you get a couple games short like we did. So that's really what I look at, and then you try to learn something from it as well. What did these teams do that we could either replicate or look to grow from ourselves?
Did you have anything that you picked up on?
No, I mean obviously both those teams had strong defenses. Mm-hmm. I think Braves was one of the better game management guys throughout the course of the season to help them get there. But I think there's always little tidbits you can get from really both teams.
Joe Thuney winning Protector of the Year.
Oh yeah.
I think back to last offseason, he was kind of the catapult to all of free agency with Poles making that trade. When you think back of what he meant to that O-line, moving him off to left tackle for that final game and then winning that inaugural award. Like, that's Caleb called him the best guard to probably ever play.
Yeah, and maybe best tackle too. I don't know, but he's phenomenal. I can't say enough good things about Joe Thuney, the impact he's had on not just the offense but the entire team. He's a pro, comes in, puts in a good day's work every single day. He's the same guy when he comes into the building every single day. And I know for that offensive line room in particular, the young guys in that room, that's what they look to. They just try to, hey, if I just do what this guy does, I think I'm going to pull out the best version of myself. And so that's really what you can hope for. And when you have your vets and playing at such a high level like that, you just say, hey, just be like that. Just do that. It makes our jobs easier as coaches.
After some time, what did DJ Moore mean to this offense and to that receiver room and his role in particular?
Man, he's such a smart and versatile player. I think that's something that gets overlooked at times. He's a guy that we felt strongly in terms of he could play any position. We could put him in any spot. There really wasn't a limit on terms of the route tree that we could ask him to do. And so it's really invaluable when you look at it. He's such a good player. He has been his entire career. I still remember him evaluating his tape coming out of Maryland, and that was an easy one. You know, you knew he was gonna be a heck of a pro, and that's what he's been. What I didn't know was just what a great teammate he would be, and he legitimately wants the guys around him to do well. He wants to win, and he loves the city of Chicago.
You said that you start from ground zero, essentially, right now. Do you still feel that way, that nothing that you changed culture-wise really matters at this point in terms of what carries over into next season?
Well, yeah, I think the worst thing that can possibly happen is any level of complacency or entitlement starts to set in. And so that's really what that comment is looking at. It's there should be none of that. None of us should be satisfied. It is, we didn't get to our ultimate goal. And so, do I expect us when we come in, the guys that were around, to know the offense better? Sure, absolutely. And yet at the same time, we got to go back to the basic building blocks of blocking, tackling, catching the football, all the little things that we focus on in youth league football that you tend to neglect in the NFL. We got to go back to that. And you can't skip corners that way, cut corners that way. And so it's really important that the guys understand that when they come back, we're going to go after it.
Final question. Tyson Bagent has obviously been talked about in terms of you guys receiving calls for him. I know you're a huge fan of him. He's a huge fan of you. But in terms of the way the quarterback room works with him and Case Keenum alongside Caleb Williams, why does that room work so well with him in there?
Well, I think he's he's a phenomenal football player, first and foremost. He's a fierce competitor, which I think that's really how that whole room is wired. I think Caleb's the same way. Like these guys, they want to go out there, compete, have the ball in their hands. I think that's really in his DNA as well. He knows that when he's called upon, if he's ever called upon, then he's going to answer that bell. And the guys believe in him. We see it every single day. I kind of joke about it. I've dusted off the same game plans in the preseason every year that I've been a play caller. And this is probably the first year with him at the helm that we actually had a quarterback complete over 60% of his balls. And I think he was close to 70% completion, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. And so, that's just a credit to him. He really took to the offense really quickly, and he's he's such a quick study. I can't say enough good things about him.
All right, Ben Johnson, enjoy your week at the Combine.
Yeah,
Thanks for your time.
The Bears dominated national narratives during their playoff run. When we come back on the offseason, we'll get a national take on some of the top insiders and what they think of the Chicago Bears this offseason.
We're joined by Tom Pelissero at the NFL Combine, talking a little Bears. And we were just saying that it's a different experience for the Bears because they have their head coach in Ben Johnson, they have their quarterback for now in Caleb Williams, and a later first-round pick. From the national perspective, what is the perspective of the Bears right now heading into this offseason?
Oh, it was unbelievably impressive what they accomplished. They showed that they know how to win games. It wasn't always pretty. It wasn't always dominating. But I think that what was most impressive to me about what Ben did in year one was the situational football, the end of games, and closing things out. That's hard for any team to learn, but particularly one that's lost as much as the Bears have in recent years. And so year two now, it's all right. It's not just about finding a way to win. People are going to say that that's unsustainable, winning all those close games. On some level, that's true. What you can do in year 2 is get more of the pieces in place in terms of the players who really fit what you want to do. It's impossible to flip an entire roster in 1 year. I expect them to be aggressive in terms of player acquisition in this offseason. And I don't just mean going out and spending a ton of money, but really honing in on getting guys who are the right fits offensively and defensively for the way that they want to play and maybe get to that dominating type of place in 2026.
The one name that keeps surrounding the Bears is Max Crosby because they need an edge rusher, but it was like one report that said it was going to be a first-round pick with DJ Moore, and then it's like it's probably going to take more than one first-round pick to get an edge rusher like Max Crosby. What are you hearing about the asking price if the Raiders don't see him in Vegas next year?
Well, and the starting point is the Raiders have to actually be willing to deal him. I mean, if you put a price tag of multiple first-round picks on virtually any player in the NFL, you're setting such a high bar that you're almost not expecting it to be cleared. We heard John Spytek up here, the general manager, say he expects Max to be back, saying they text and talk all the time. I would say that's not the end of the Max Crosby story here. Certainly, the Bears are one of the teams that you would anticipate being on that list if, in fact, the Raiders take the posture that they're willing to move on from Max. I think we'll have answers on that over the next 7 to 10 days here. We'll see what direction it goes. But for a team that, again, is trying to take that next step forward, going to gain a veteran player, a veteran pass rusher, an impact position like Max, a culture changer type of guy, it's something you absolutely have to evaluate.
Yeah, well, we've been surprised to hear that Tyson Bagent has been in some trade talks as a undrafted free agent Division II quarterback to now getting calls about possibly wanting him. How is the quarterback draft class impacting the calls?
Sorry, you never know what a text is going to be.
Oh, no, I understand. That's the life you live. Just it's a down quarterback draft class. So how is that impacting all of the moves that teams are looking to see where they can find one of the best 32?
It's a great point. And depending how you look at it, there's 7 to 9 teams that we don't really have a clear idea what their starting quarterback plan is going to be. There's going to be a bunch of quarterbacks, and there are veteran quarterbacks available who, whether it's via trade or release, talking about Kirk Cousins, Tua, Kyler Murray, Geno Smith, Justin Fields, and then obviously you've got some free agents available as well. But in terms of the guys with upside, the young quarterbacks, there's not that many out there, nor are there ever a whole lot of those young guys. Malik Willis is an exception to the rule, and Bears fans, I'm sure, saw him playing for the Packers and playing at a pretty good level where he's going to end up getting paid here in free agency. But failing that, you're really trying to find, all right, we may have to trade for somebody's backup and give him an opportunity here. Will Levis from the Titans is another guy in that category that maybe somebody could take a flyer on. Anthony Richardson here in Indianapolis. But Tyson Bagent, based on when he's gotten his opportunity, the level at which he's played, and knowing how much Ben Johnson values him, Ben Johnson would not tie himself or want to do a contract extension like he did last year with Bagent if he didn't think he had a really smart, capable, talented dude that if something were to happen to Caleb, he couldn't step in. What the Bears have to answer is, all right, now let's say something, God forbid, happens to Caleb. Do we have the resources to go get someone? In other words, all right, we trade Tyson Bagent and we get, call it whatever, a 4th-round draft pick. Well, now you're going to have to spend $5-10 million to get a backup quarterback or use another draft pick to get a quarterback and hope he's as good as Tyson Bagent. Those are all the things that teams have to weigh. And we've seen it repeatedly in recent years here, just like the 49ers last year. You may have to play a stretch with your backup quarterback, and there's only so many of those guys who are going to be able to win you games.
Yeah, we know that Ryan Poles is dealing with cap constraints really for the first time since he's been general manager of the Bears, and that might affect what they're able to do in free agency. But when you look at the free agent class, knowing that Trey Hendrickson is the big edge rusher that could possibly be a fit with the Bears, do you see that as a good fit if they're able to find the money to pay him?
Well, Trey's the one, and we'll find out by Tuesday if they tag him in Cincinnati. They could still end up holding on to him. He's the one of all the edge rushers that potentially could be available that you would think would have a really strong market, and it's going to be expensive. And so those are all things you weigh out too. I know that everybody gets excited, and rightfully so. It's been a while for the Bears since you're talking about winning playoff games, but there is a balance between, hey, we're going all in right now, and we're going to trade for guys or sign players who, Trey's got good football left, but he's 31, 32 years old at this point. If you leverage yourself in terms of using trade assets or cap assets on older players, it can hamstring some things you want to do, because if you're Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson, you're hoping you're drafting well enough in the coming years that you're paying your own guys as opposed to going out into the marketplace, and so you have to be able to strike that balance.
Yeah, we know they had the best rookie draft class last year, and they are hoping they're having to pay a quarterback in a couple of years. Tom Pelissero, we appreciate your time.
You got it, Cassie.
What is the national impression of the Bears and what they did last season and what they are set to try and duplicate this year?
Sure. I think, a few years ago, when they made the playoffs with Trubisky and Matt Nagy, and he was Coach of the Year, and things were trending upwards. That, in my estimation, I still needed to see more before I could believe like the Bears had arrived. This time around, I've seen all I need to see. I truly feel that everything that Ryan Poles has put together, everything that Ben Johnson has cashed in, and everything that Caleb Williams has done in his first full year of having a staff like Ben Johnson's to get him ready, prepare him, and then let him play fast and instinctively. I've seen all I need to see. That this is a team that I think is going to be around for some time, with a run game that is going to always be fed and stout. The offensive line that Bears fans have been lamenting for a while, 2 All-Pros on it. And then, Ryan Poles in last year's draft, from Colston Loveland to Kyle Monangai, Luther Burden in between, and just to name 3. Just keep on adding all those prospects and let them fly.
Some of the throws that Caleb made in the fourth quarter, whether it be the walk-off touchdown to DJ Moore against the Packers, the Cole Kmet touchdown to send the divisional into overtime.
Yes.
Have you seen a second-year quarterback make throws like that in big-time plays, 2-minute drill?
Everybody always compared him to Mahomes because of his ability to create out of the pocket and throw from arm angles that your body position shouldn't normally allow. And so, he's now doing all that. Of the throws you mentioned, the one that leaps out to me was the 4th and 8 throw, moving to his left and finding Rome Odunze perfectly before Odunze's feet would get out of bounds, and having the ability to, that's the one where he did look like the jump man. And for him to go to his left but still have the arm strength to get it over the defense in such a way, with such velocity on the ball, to be as accurate as where it was. That was the most impressive one, because if you don't convert that 4th down, you're down 2 scores at that point in time. There would be no comeback in that game against the Packers. Everything that you're seeing from Caleb is exactly what you were hoping for when Poles and company chose him first overall.
When Ben Johnson was hired, a lot of people had questions about how he would be as a leader of men.
Yeah.
And the way he changed the culture in Chicago so instantly with his intensity and attention to details, I think took everyone by surprise. And then to see it manifest itself in wins was even more shocking. But to see how he is kind of made himself a target for NFL coaches in a lot of ways by calling out Matt LaFleur. Like, that's not normal in the NFL. It's been a fun change in Chicago to hear it, but from the other side, I'm not so sure everyone loves it.
Well, all politics are local, is the phrase in our political world, and his local politics are to give voice to Bears fans that were sick and tired of hearing Aaron Rodgers owning them, or the championship belt being put on Rodgers, and Love kicking tail while Rodgers had moved on, and then Favre before Rodgers. And it's similar. Lovie Smith, when he took the job, basically saying, "I'm here to beat the Packers," and Ben Johnson saying at the time that he likes beating Matt LaFleur twice a year, was kind of like, "Okay, bud, like, I don't know what you've been able to do. You've been the offensive guy for Dan Campbell, who's clearly the one who sets the standard for culture, and clearly is the one who is in charge of the culture up there in Detroit." And then we learn, well, Ben Johnson has some significant intensity to his own way, in his own self, and in his own right. And that's the thing that Ryan Poles was telling me when he was on the show the other day, is that he realized in training camp we got the right guy. That it's somebody who is holding people accountable and doing it in a fair and equal way. That he was seeing that the culture was being laid down properly. And so I think you're spot on with what you said.
The Bears really addressed the offensive line last year.
Yeah.
Now it's all about the holes on the defense, and there are quite a few.
Right.
Do you feel like they are a Max Crosby type player away from being a legitimate contender?
I don't think Max Crosby is going to be moved for various reasons. One of them, too, is if I'm the Raiders, I'd want more than just a first-round pick for him. I'd say the Micah Parsons trade is the floor. and then that might not be enough for me to give Max Crosby to the Bears, and that's a hefty, price to pay. And I just don't know the way that the Bears just are going about their business. It would be aggressive, but it would also just show you, like, did the Packers win the Super Bowl because they got Micah Parsons last year? They did not. Slow and steady. I kind of like the way that, again, Poles just hit on every draft choice, and we can't expect that every year, but do it again or come close to it again, and let's see how they go, and just be smart about free agency, re-sign some of your own, and I think you're in good hands.
What's
really.
the national narrative around DJ Moore right now?
Good
or
question.
Is there one?
I don't know.
At all?
I don't really know of one. And obviously what he's been able to do in the last year or two with Caleb, he made some big plays. Just ask a Packer fan, So I honestly don't know what the Bears are going to do on that front and what they should do, but running it back isn't a bad idea on offense.
Yeah, they love their locker room. Rich Eisen, I appreciate your time. Thanks
My
for joining
pleasure.
us. Speaking of Ben Johnson and his hatred for the Packers, are you surprised to hear a head coach be so vocal about buying into kind of the narrative that he's built around the rivalry?
Well, what's surprising about it is within the coaching industry, it's a community, and they all know each other, and they may be working with each other. They may need to call the other guy for a favor, for a job, whatever, and to lean completely into the idea that I'm the Bears coach, the Bears hate the Packers, Bears fans hate the Packers, so I am going to adopt that persona. I think fans love that. I think that one of the things that drives fans crazy is when the game ends and the players from the two teams go out and they're hugging each other and they're holding the jerseys up, and the team that lost doesn't seem very upset. That just drives fans crazy because they have that passion that they want to see in the players and in the coaches. And for the coaches, I don't think it was ever that way. Ben Johnson's trying to make it that way, and I just think it's hilarious because Matt LaFleur's reaction to the whole thing is,
What did I do?
Yeah, what did I do? How did I get in the middle of this?
He didn't do anything. He's just wearing the wrong colors. That's the matter of
Exactly.
fact. It's very college. That's what it reminds me of. And I think it's great for the NFL. And again, if you're on the Bears side, Ben Johnson's side, you love it. And if you're on the other side, you hate it, especially when he backs up his words and does beat Matt LaFleur twice.
Well, you're right. It's like Ohio State, Michigan, and the Bears, Packers, that's the equivalent when you think about it. I mean, for the 100th season of the NFL, when they bumped the Super Bowl champion out of the Thursday night opening game, they picked Packers-Bears. That is the rivalry in the NFL. And now, with both teams playing well, both teams having successful seasons, meeting in the playoffs, the arrow's only going to go up with that rivalry.
And part of that is Caleb Williams, which Ryan Poles alluded to. They're preparing to hopefully pay him in a couple of years. The Bears haven't had to deal with that, and it obviously affects what they're able to do now and in the future. How does that change the philosophy from what you know from a front office standpoint, trying to win now, or do you do it and space it out so you can still pay Caleb Williams?
Well, what you have to do is plan for the reality that after this coming season, the window's going to open on a second contract for Caleb Williams. And if I were advising Caleb Williams, I would say don't put your foot on a blade of grass in 2027 until you get your contract. You've earned it, you've proven what you can do, and you're eligible for it. And if they want you, they got to pay you. And from the team's perspective, it only gets more expensive the longer you wait because he's only going to get better and better. The question is coming in with the right structure, the right number. The market always goes up. The salary cap always goes up. You know, fans have their eyes pop out when they see the numbers of these contracts, but the money's there for it. The salary cap's there for it, and half of all the money goes to the owners, and they're buying luxury yachts and, you know,
I don't know
50
that the
homes.
McCaskies are.
Well, but for the most part, the money's there for
Yeah.
everyone. And if I'm a Bears fan and I'm thinking, oh no, Caleb's going to want $60 million, don't freak out about that. The money's there to take care of everyone. And when you have a great quarterback, I mean, you've been waiting a long time for a franchise quarterback. One of the realities of having one is you got to pay him.
Yeah. What is the window for the Bears, in your belief?
Unlimited. As long as Caleb's there and Ben Johnson's there, you know, you got the two most important pieces. You got the coach, you got the quarterback, and they're paired together. One of the good things about having an offensive coach and not a defensive coach is you don't have to worry about the offensive coordinator leaving because he's got a head coaching job because of his work with the quarterback. So there's going to be continuity. They're going to get better and better. the challenge now for Ryan Poles in the front office is find the players to sprinkle in around. And when you have a quarterback that's going to be getting top of the market money, it makes it even more important to get young, cheap players with your draft picks who can fill those roles. And then you have to be smart about who you keep, who you don't keep. And it's just going to be a constant process, and the names are going to change. Look at what the Chiefs have gone through with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. How much has changed around him since he became the starter in 2018? That's what you need to constantly do. Be looking for the ways to have the good players around the guy who's going to be the centerpiece of the team. But this is something the Bears, they wanted it forever. Back to Sid Luckman. I mean, there has not been a franchise quarterback on the Chicago Bears since Sid Luckman. We thought that Jay Cutler would get there. The farthest he got was an NFC Championship game. But it feels like this is the dawn of something that's sustainable. Unlike the 85 Bears, which never really fulfilled their full potential, this feels like something that's going to keep going up and up and up and up.
So it sounds like you're a proponent of draft, if that's how you're going to build your team. And we know
you've got to because
the edge rusher in particular.
You get the players so cheap relative to what a veteran costs. And you get them for 4 years. If it's a first-round pick, you get them for 5 years. But the best thing that ever happened for the teams, not for the players, in 2011 they revamped the way that rookies are paid. They're paid so much less relative to what veterans can make that becomes the heart and soul of your team. And that's why draft picks are so important. That's why you don't want to trade them if you don't have to. You want to keep them, and if you can acquire more, you do it, because those guys become that nucleus that just grows as your team progresses.
So what would be the fear then of trading for Max Crosby if the Raiders even want to trade him?
That would be, I'm told that they want 2 first-round picks and a player. So if you're looking at, and I know my partner at PFT Live, Chris Sims, thinks DJ Moore should be included in that package because there's a lot of good receivers on the Bears. So you're looking at 2 first-round picks. What is it this year, 25?
Yeah.
25 this year. It's probably going to be a low one next year. Maybe it's going to be number 32 next year. But are you willing to part ways with those selections and a DJ Moore, if that would get it done, to get Max Crosby? You got to look at what Crosby can bring to the team. You know, they've already been there, done that with the Raiders with Khalil Mack, but when you've got Caleb Williams, and I'm a big believer in Max Crosby. He's a transformational type of a talent. He's a guy who's going to influence other players to step up and do the things that need to be done to be great. And I think he's so anxious to get to a team that is great. Now, he's been very loyal to the Raiders, but I think they pushed it a little too far by shutting him down at the end of the season when he had an injury he thought he could play through, and that bridge may be burned now. So the Bears have to at least consider it, but it's going to be expensive. He's going to want a new contract if he shows up, and you got to balance that against what you could get with those draft picks.
Does that make an NFC Championship team?
Yeah.
So is it worth it then?
The question is, are we going all in? Are we trying to do this now, knowing that, again, Caleb's going to be there, Ben Johnson's going to be there, but this is an opportunity that falls into your lap. How do you feel about taking the big swing and trying to not just get to the Super Bowl, but, win it?
Yeah, and we know it's also a deep edge class, which also will play
That's
a
part of the
factor
balance.
into it as well.
Yep.
Ryan Poles admitted that he's had conversations with the league about not receiving the compensatory draft picks for Ian Cunningham. Is there anything that the league will change? Will they give it to them if they look at this and say, maybe we need to adjust how this is worded, or this is an exception to the rule?
I've got many thoughts about this. I'll try to be as concise as possible. First of all, the league has already told me that Matt Ryan is the primary football executive of the Falcons, and it does not matter that Ian Cunningham is the GM. Now, it's strange and confusing because Matt Ryan has said Ian's in charge of the draft and free agency. So why wouldn't Ian be the guy regarded as the top football executive and enough of a promotion to activate this provision that was put in place to reward teams for developing minority candidates who receive promotions? Now, my problem with that is the NFL has had a historic problem when it comes to the hiring practices for coaches and general managers relative to the demographics of the league and the coaches and the available candidates, and their fixes don't really work, and there's no real accountability. And this whole idea of giving teams draft picks, that's not the way to solve the problem. But if you're going to have this provision, how do the Bears not get the 2 third-round picks? So I thought it was over, but then when I saw what both Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham had to say about it, I don't know. I'd keep knocking on the door if I'm the Bears saying, I just don't think you're handling this the right way.
Yeah, on the roll, Ryan Poles admitted it's a little weird because he said the Chiefs got a 3rd-round pick. He's watching that player on the field. He's like, that's because of me. It doesn't seem to sit well with him in general. Do you keep up with the stadium, with the Bears?
Oh, yeah, I keep up with the stadium. Look, my belief is that they should be on the lakefront. And Indiana versus Arlington Heights doesn't matter to me because it's not downtown. I think the stadium needs to be downtown. And I saw after one of the playoff games, I assume it was after the Packers game, they put on their Twitter page this great shot of the stadium overhead in the city. And it's like, are you just trolling people? Like, why are you reveling in this if you're trying to move out of the city? And maybe the way this all works, because they got great leverage. They got Indiana, they got Illinois. Maybe the end result is they build a new stadium on the lakefront. And I wish it would be open air, but we know that is not happening because you can't host the Final Four outdoors.
Yeah,
they
need to host Final Fours, Taylor Swift concerts, all the above.
Yeah, think about that. If every stadium in America is like a dome indoors, there's only so many Final Fours to go around. There's only so many stops on Taylor Swift's tour. And I know Chicago would get one, but this whole idea, we got to put all the stadiums indoors. We got to have events year round. It's like, I like football out in the elements, and we're going to see more and more teams going indoors.
It was like a movie with the snow falling in both playoff games at Soldier Field. Mike
It
Florio.
was cold. I was there for the second one. It was, but I was.
But
back,
you're warm when all that
I was
happens.
back in the hotel watching the game. So, but
wait, what?
Yeah. I didn't. They kick us off the sideline. They don't let the pregame people stay on the sideline. We have to leave. So it's like, you know what?
That's
I'm going back
insider
to the
info
hotel.
right there.
Yeah.
All right, Mike Florio, we appreciate your time.
Sure thing.